Good morning. Welcome to the University Unitarian Universalist Society. Fellowship, thing, place, crowd. So good to see so many people here. It feels really like home again. Yay. This is join us as we settle into our shared sacred space. Turn off the little beepers and things on your phones and whatever other electronic bits you have. Yeah, right. Some people frighten me. It may be a conspiracy. Before we get into anything like the real service, we're going to hear from any committee leaders that have anything to share with us for today. So I'll have reports from committee leaders. Hello, cyberspace.
Hi, David McElroy. We're now meeting, the men's group is now meeting once a month live. So the next one will be June 13th. I'll announce it a few more times, but just want to let you know the next men's group live is June 13th.
What time?
6:30 here at the church. And it'll be potluck. Hopefully we can do it that way.
Oh yeah, I'll bring my pot.
Good morning, John Mowbray on behalf of Facilities and Grounds. Man, we had a lot of people turn out yesterday. So we'd like to thank the following folks: Marilyn and Barry London, Lori Skriel, Melanie Erie, Lorraine Williams, Dave Simons, Michelle Flores, Derek Catlin, Peter Carlson, Paula Despang, Ken Westerland, Carl Packham, Karen Cowden and Ethan, Joey Cole, and Damien.
Very good.
Next workday will be the third Saturday of July.
June.
I'm Lori Streel. I'm the new hospitality director. As in all transitions, sometimes things are not 100% smooth. So if you have already volunteered to work coffee on a clipboard, We have no idea what the clipboard is. We're switching to a calendar, and I have one person right now booked for next week. We really need two. And then there's all of June. So, you know, it's just getting here at 9:30 to start the coffee, and then doing a bit of cleanup at the end. And so if I could get some, this will be sitting over there, and I just ask you to write your name, your phone number in case something comes up and I need to get a hold of you. And I really would hope to have some people volunteer. Thank you.
Hi, Ann and I are here for the women's group. We were so sorry with so much going on that we weren't able to meet in May, but we want to have a nice meeting. We're planning it now, what did you say, June 24th? June 24th, it's a Friday evening. And, you know, if anybody here wants to contact us that's not on the list, please do with your email address, because we communicate through email. And Ann or I will take your information. I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, that's it. Did a good job.
What's
Just-
the email they should?
Oh, well, you can send it to Ann Packham at yahoo.com, ANNEPACKHAM, or just see us after, and we'll put you on the list.
They are the linger-longers, and they'll be here for a while after the service is over.
Okay, on behalf of the SAC committee, for those of you that already participate, you got the email, but there is a SAC committee meeting this afternoon on Zoom, right, at 11:55 is usually when they start, I think. So if you need the email, come see me. And one of the things we forgot to put up, we still have the sign-up sheets for different groups here. I've got to get with Amy and see if she has another.
They're in the hallway.
I know, I saw them, they're great. Another bright colored one, because somehow I forgot to mention the program planning team. We can always use service leaders. It's not hard, it's just somebody that doesn't mind getting up and leading through service and adding a little bit of their own personality and
Not too much.
bringing it to the congregations. Not too much, yes. Anyway, and we'll also be having a program planning team meeting sometime, hopefully before General Assembly, which starts June 20th. So watch the notable news. Anyway, and come see me if you're interested. I'm Martha.
Dave Simons, really an add-on to what Facilities notice was. We have one of the AC units not working, the one that goes in the conference room and the library. The fan's not going, so we don't have as good air conditioning as we should have till that gets fixed. So I wonder, how many people have AC at home? How many people leave their front and back door open when they have the AC running?
Elegantly put. I've drafted Amelia to help me.
I want to be with people who submerge in the task.
Who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along.
Who stand in the line and haul in their places.
Who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move into common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire must be put out.
The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust.
But the thing worth doing well done, the things worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident.
Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used.
The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real. Marge Percy. Music. We got live music again.
Please rise in body or spirit, and we have a couple of choir members here to help us sing along. And yes, keep your mask on, but you can sing boisterously underneath.
And we'll be performing Gathered Here is number 389 in the Grace Songbook, if you'd like to follow along.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our chalice lighter today is Finn. Finn is 5 years old. Pronouns are he and him. I tell you this because it's not always going to be what you thought. And he's excited because after church today, he's going to the pool.
Right.
Yes. And this is a perfect day to go to the pool. Do you need help? Take this one up a little. Now hold that one sideways.
I don't know.
We're going to try again. Yeah. Okay. You hold that one sideways, and I'll hold this one sideways, and then you make it match up.
I'm trying. That's like so.
No, no. Oh, goodness gracious. There it is. Well done. Thank you. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Yay! I'd like to offer a special welcome to our guest. I'm Paula Despang. I'm your service leader today. My pronouns are I, me, and no, not that. She and her and herself and whatnot like that. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad cyberspace is here too today. This is good. When you can't be here in person, you can be here anyway. And we know you're there, and you know that we're here. So. Visit with us several times to get the full flavor of our congregation, and you might decide to become one of us. That would be fine. In this congregation, we share our joys and concerns as a group. And if you have a joy or a concern that you would like to share, there's a microphone right there. If you want me to, I can bring the microphone to you. If getting up is not the straightforward process for you that it was 40, 50 years ago.
Hello, David McElroy. I have a concern and a joy. Our dear Chloe McElroy has come down with COVID, and she's in the process, she's doing pretty well. She's in the process of trying to get the antiviral. It's gone through a bunch of stuff to try to get it, and anyway, she's doing pretty good. If you could keep her in your thoughts, we'd appreciate it. A lot of healing toward her. My joy is that tomorrow I'm leaving for Oklahoma City to do it was supposed to be the 50th, but the 52nd year of a USO tour that I did in 1970. So I'm meeting with, I'm meeting with 7 of the, I think 12 that were with us. So.
Hi, I'm Amy Mowbray, and I have 2 joys. My first joy is that our youngest son, David, is on a flight right now to Michigan State for a National Science Foundation research internship this summer for 10 weeks, and he's super excited, all about plant genomics. He wants to make sure we can all keep eating, which is a very common, fun activity in the Mowbray family, so he cares about food security. My other joy is Ann Packham, who is going to wonder why I'm doing this, but I woke up this morning and I can look across this congregation and there is not a soul in here that I know doesn't do a lot in our community. But I wanted to thank you, and if you don't mind getting up, I wanted to give you these. And in her work in the community, both here and in our larger community, I can't tell you how many hours she's spent because I've given her number to somebody to help them get set up with affordable health care. And I've just never really thanked you for all the time that you've spent. And I know it's just your job to you, but it really makes a big difference. And thank you.
She just got an award for excellence in health equity.
I'm Margie, and my grandson Henry's visiting. He's 3, and he is a big monster truck fan. So this afternoon, Henry and I are going to the Monster Jam World Finals.
I'm going to 3rd grade in 2 months. I'm a little excited and I'm a little worried because my best friend Jill, I'm scared if my best friend Jill this is her last year to going to the school. And if it is, she's a great friend. She loves everyone. She is very kind. And Jill, this is for you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I like your parents, and I love your friends. Hello. Today we're going to the pool.
Good morning. I'm Michael Richards, for those that don't know me. I think this COVID thing is an RE thing. Chloe, as we just heard, came down with it this week, and I got a text this morning and a phone call from Judith, and she has just tested positive with COVID. So please send good thoughts and prayers to Chloe and to Judith for a quick recovery for both of them. Thank you.
Hi, Larry Vita. I have 2 joys. My first joy is that I completely covered my house with solar panels. And my second joy is that Friday I'm going on vacation to Grand Canyon, then California. A nice wedding at the end. That's going to be great.
Good morning, Michelle Flores. I have a couple of joys this morning. The first one is that we actually my family just got back from vacation in Hawaii, which was an amazing blessing for us. My dad basically took the family, so it was really, really awesome. My second joy is that, oh my gosh, I'm sorry if I get a little emotional. A few people know Jules was accepted into a pre-college summer program for this summer, and I am so very proud of them. I can't even look at them, I'm gonna start crying. I'm so very proud of them and all the work that they've put in, because it's you have to apply for this program the same way you would apply to go to college. So they put in a lot of work and effort, and now they're kind of raising some funds so we can, fully fund all of that, and we're really, really excited for them this week. This summer, it's an amazing opportunity. It's a university in New York City. They go and stay on campus for like 2 weeks, and I am just so incredibly excited for the opportunities for them. So, thanks.
Melanie Irie. I have two joys. One is that John had minor surgery on his wrist on Friday, and everything went well, and he's recovering and enjoying his pain medication. So that's a good thing. And then my second one is I get to see my older son, Christopher, who I haven't seen since January this coming week. So I'm excited to see him.
We're going to Colorado and Chicago.
While I'm up here, I'd like to share my joy. First, I hope Uriah is very proud of himself, but I'm very proud because last week we weren't here. He had his first piano recital, and he was very brave and got up there and did a great job.
Hi, Amanda Major. I have lots to be joyful about. One is completing a full year of academic work in an MDA program. Another is going on vacation very soon to Cozumel. And another, by their own determination and will, my two children are doing really awesome in school because I'm busy doing other things, so they're doing great on their own. Thank goodness. Thank you.
Anything from online?
Let's see, thank you. Yes, just a couple.
Happy would really like to thank you for remembering all the people in cyberspace. And we do every week, hopefully we always remember to say that. Chloe McElroy is watching today, and she did finally get corona and just appreciates all the good juju that we can send. She can't afford to have COVID. And I think there's one more here. It's already been saved. That means it should get bigger. I'm sorry, I was away last week because, my daughter, Cammie, graduated from USC with a master's in EE, electrical engineering. All right, I got it. Woo-hoo! That's exciting. That's very exciting. She's moving today to Seattle to start her first job.
Let's have a moment of silence for those things shared, and remember that joys shared are multiplied, and concerns shared are lightened and easier to carry. May it be so. Martha Kirby has our Time for All Ages this morning.
Good morning. I was the lucky winner of the lottery to take over for Judith, as she realized last night she was not going to make it. And of course, we heard this morning a definitive reason why not. So today's Time for All Ages is about meaning, which is what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. I love the picture that Trista picked for our talking in tongues this morning, because it is easy to get twisted up and not say exactly what you think or really feel, or you misunderstand someone else because they have a different understanding of the word than we do, or whatever it is. It's very easy. We're all really good at that here, and sometimes we do even better and get it right. So I need some volunteers, and what we're going to do today is have these words in here, and I want you to pick one and tell us what your understanding of that word is. And let's see how many people have the same understanding. There's some interesting words in here. I see David. Okay, let's start with David. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Lorraine.
The word is radical, and radical to me was from the 60s, where there was protests for Vietnam, and people like the Chicago 8 and people like that were considered radicals and subversives, and that's what I think of when I see the word radical.
Did you want to comment on that word, or do you want a different word? Okay. Before we do that, I think that's what I would think of as radical. How many kind of identified with that statement about radical? No? There's a lot of other definitions here. It's even a math term, which I had forgotten. Yeah. Excuse me?
So I was saying, I would think radical definition would be more.
Let me get it.
I would have said that radical, a little more general, that it would be thinking differently from the majority.
Besides the math term, it says associated with political views. Free radical, a group of atoms bonded together, considered an entity. So it might be good to ask people what they're thinking. We might not all have the same perception of that word. Oh, thank you, Patrick. Should have thought of that earlier, a second mic. So who would like to, you want to draw another word? Atheism.
Atheism. The belief that no God exists. Belief in no gods.
Anyone else have something different on that one?
You're commenting on that one, Roy?
Yeah,
What was the word?
Atheism.
Pretty good listener. So atheism, that's someone who doesn't have enough courage to be an agnostic.
Yeah, I've heard it the other way around. But there aren't too many other definitions here other than the archaic one of godlessness, especially in conduct. I don't think any of us would use that anymore. I have quite a few friends that are atheists. Huh?
I married one.
All right, let's have another word. Anybody on the other side want to pick a word? Okay. Anne is traveling to Lindsay.
The word is pragmatic. Boy.
Do over, pick another word.
How about puzzling? That's puzzling, I guess.
I didn't hear what she said.
She said puzzling.
Puzzling. Relating to matters of fact or practical affairs, often to the exclusion of intellectual or artistic matters, as opposed to idealism.
Or puzzling because you don't know the meaning of it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot, you know.
We're doing one more, Martha?
One more. And then, there's a lot of good ones in there.
Religion.
Aha! That's a big word, isn't it?
It's a huge word, and it all depends on who you are, where you live, what the people around you, how they influence you. It's a huge word. It's a big idea.
It's a huge word. I agree. And probably don't have time to fully suss out the meaning of that one. She has some notes here. It can be a noun. Well, it is a noun. I'm sorry, I read the different, there was a lot of stuff she sent last night. But a cause, principle, or systems of beliefs held to with ardor and faith. That's the one that resonates the most with me, because in the Unitarian Universalism world, we do not have to declare or worship a God. Some of us may. We have Christians, we have atheists, we have Buddhists, we have Hindus, we have Jewish people. We have a variety of people that ascribe to our shared values and diverse beliefs, and that's what makes Unitarian Universalism useful, as long as we can also communicate to each other and make sure that we're kind of on the same page with different meanings, or discuss it together in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which is our fourth principle. And is there anything you'd like to add, Greg? I missed a little note. Is this Greg will maybe use some of these words differently when we let him speak. So anyway, let's just remember our free and responsible search for truth and meaning means actually talking to each other too, and figuring out how we can understand each other's position without just dismissing it from the very beginning.
Okay. Thank you. It's always tricky to try to be the person who presents somebody else's idea. We use those baskets for more than just words. We also put money in them. And you have the opportunity to do that today, or you can go online to our tiny URL and put money in that way. Or, let's see, what other choices do we have? If you are desperately hurting for some money, you reach in right in there and you take some out.
Are we singing the kids out? We're singing the kids out.
After we take the offering. 40% of what we put into the basket today will go to Harbor House of Central Florida, which is a shelter for abused partners who have to get the heck out of Dodge and save their lives.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will. I know this rose will. I know this fear 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 will. I know this rose 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 will. I know this fear 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 will. I know this rose 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 will. I know this fear 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 will. I know this rose 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 will open.
We have a recessional to sing our children out, and I still haven't learned the tune, so someone else will have to do this with me, or for me. Who knows this tune? Yep. We bless you and send you on your way. We love you and bless you today and every day. We love you and bless you and send you on your way. We love you and bless you today and every day. notes on the speaker. Our speaker today is Dr. Glenn Cavenaugh. Greg Cavenaugh. Oh. When I was 17, I met somebody else named Glenn Cavenaugh, and I keep making a mess out of this. He's from the communications department of Rollins College, where he is somebody. And he began his intellectual studies in preparation for all this, studying religious communication, and so he's well qualified to speak to us today on this topic. I will also note on a more personal note that he's leaving town. He and his wife have both been offered positions at the University of Richmond in Virginia, and they will be leaving at the end of this month. So, but don't say goodbye to him until after he's done speaking, okay? Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'll start by saying that I too have a joy and a concern in that we are leaving. It's interesting, more or less by accident, Martha reached out to me at this time to come and talk with you, and I, of course, there's some of you in here going, who is this guy and why does it matter? And the rest of you know that I used to give the talk here fairly often, about 3 or 4 times a year. And I've been very, very grateful for the way this community has been interested in whatever I happen to have to say, and I will miss you folks greatly. But my wife has become, or will become, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Richmond. And so it's a great opportunity for us, and yet one of the things that I'm trying to do very intentionally, most of the places that I've left in my life, I left knowing I was going to leave, right? When you start your master's, you know when you finish it, you're going somewhere else. When you start your doctorate, you finish that, and you know you're going somewhere else. And here, I did not know that I was going anywhere else. Until suddenly we are. And so I've been trying to be very intentional about saying goodbye to the place here and being very focused on saying goodbye to the things that matter. So you're one of them, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today. I also have a PowerPoint that I'm hoping will pop up at some point, because otherwise I have no idea what I'm saying. But I'll start off by saying that this was a year that is sort of my year of living dangerously, in that I intentionally decided to address topics in the classroom that are difficult to address in the 21st century, in particular in the era of Trump. In the fall, I taught a class in inclusive leadership, fully expecting to have to do battle with the folks who are against what they think critical race theory is, without understanding any of that, and was ready to do battle with those folks, and then nobody wanted to argue with me. And we had a lovely class. And this semester I taught Rhetoric of Religion, which is something I've taught quite often, but obviously it has a different meaning and function today than it did when I first started teaching it. And but it's also that interest in religion that stemmed originally from the fact that I wanted to understand what the heck my sister was all about, because suddenly she became an evangelical conservative, and I was trying to figure out what that meant and what it didn't mean. And so some of my earliest research was just trying to understand that community, and it actually pops up in this talk today. But I'm still waiting to see, is there going to be a PowerPoint? There we go. All right. So speaking in tongues is something that I've actually talked about in my classes. I also teach a class on the performance of ritual and how ritual functions in our lives. And I have a reading on speaking in tongues that I also used in this class. And in this case, in this particular class, one of the things I was looking at was the role of religion, religious rhetoric in America, and the ways in which it has been mobilized by folks as different as Martin Luther King Jr. in using it to transform the nation, Billy Graham, and then also I'm going to explain to you why John Wayne's up there in just a little bit, because he doesn't seem like he would fit there, but that's kind of the point of this conversation today, is that when we think about what religion is what people do with the religion. And there's an official set of values associated with that, but then there's what people are actually doing with it. In fact, one of the readings that my students worked through in this past term looked at religion as a verb rather than a noun, so it was kind of funny that you brought that up. So as I started preparing for this course, I had to ask myself, how the hell can I teach religion in 2022? What does it mean to teach religion in 2022 in the college classroom? Who am I going to be speaking to and with? What am I going to be saying? In the past, I've actually made the course very wide open, addressing a wide variety of religious backgrounds and groups and how discourse functions for those communities, so Buddhist rhetoric, which is kind of a paradox, Hindu rhetoric, Jewish rhetoric, and so forth. But I decided very intentionally to make this class about the role of religious rhetoric in the United States, and in particular to openly explore the question of evangelical conservatism and how it's influenced American culture and how various movements have pushed back and responded to that. So what I want to do with you today is talk a little bit about what we discussed in that class. Obviously, it's going to be a small portion of what happened in that class. And I want to move from that to what makes religious dialogue so challenging today. Now, it's always difficult to talk religion. One of the reasons I love studying religious and spiritual discourse is it's how do we talk about the things that are the most important and the hardest to put in words. And so religious dialogue is always difficult, but I think it's especially difficult today for a few specific reasons. And finally, what helps facilitate such dialogues when you have them happen? Because I, of course, came into this class assuming that I would struggle with things that, again, I, by and large, didn't end up struggling with in my class. So, quick overview of religious rhetoric in the United States. Of course, it's a complex history because, of course, there were folks here practicing their own faith and belief systems before Europeans came along and decided that the United States was a Christian nation. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But of course, one of the ways of framing American history is to say that the European pilgrims who came here looking for religious freedom to practice their particular version of Protestant Christianity. And so I wanted to focus on how Protestant rhetoric influences early U.S. political and social discourse. Protestant values in particular influence the development of extraordinary individualism in the United States. Protestantism at its core says that you don't need a priest to intervene between you and God. You don't need intercessory saints to intercede on your behalf. You have a direct relationship with Jesus, and you can obtain that direct relationship in and through your engagement with the Bible. And you know, the Bible would be written in your vernacular, and you would read it rather than having a priest reading it in Latin. This is powerful, it's transformative, it allows us to think for ourselves, it involves critical thinking. It also contributes, though, to some of the less pleasant aspects of individualism. As I teach in my intercultural communication course all the time, the U.S. is the most individualistic nation in the world. And that's good, and it's challenging. Individualism is wonderful when you think for yourself and use critical thinking on a practical level. Individualism is problematic, rather, when you're going to do what you're going to do and you don't care what anybody else is going to say. You believe that your values and your goals should supersede anybody else's values and goals, and the community is functionally irrelevant, and that's why you don't need to wear a mask, say. there are several ways in which individualism comes into the United States, but one of the ways it comes into the United States is through the influence of Protestant Christianity. Additionally, famously, Max Weber argued that the work ethic that we so favor in the United States and the investment that we have in capitalism comes in part from what he called salvation anxiety, which is the Protestant notion. For those of you who don't know, historically Protestantism held predestination. That is, God already knows where you're going. You don't know where you're going, but God does. And all you can do is act like you're going to be going to heaven and hope that you're right. And so you have to work very, very hard and be very, very diligent and cross your T's and dot your I's and be as perfect as possible on the hope that God has already chosen you as one of the elect to go to heaven. So the sense of industry and doing in order to achieve something that will get you to heaven is written into U.S. culture from the earliest days. Now that's historical, and one of the historical influences on the U.S. is the rise of evangelical Christianity, largely in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The earliest version of evangelical Christianity in the U.S. held four distinctives, that is, four things that were characteristic of evangelical Christianity in particular. One was the upholding of the Bible as one's ultimate authority, confessing the centrality of Christ's atonement and sacrifice on the cross, belief in a born-again conversion experience of being utterly transformed, and actively working to spread this good news and reform society accordingly. Now, you can decide how you feel about any or all of those things, but that's historically what evangelical Christianity was about. It is also, as my class immediately realized when we started talking about this, not what evangelical Christianity is about in 2022. Or arguably, none of those things are relevant or are differently relevant in 2022. In 2022, evangelical Christianity is driven by a whole different set of imperatives that come less from the Bible and theology and religious belief and more from culture products that are consumed and have been consumed for 40 to 50 years. One of the things that we talked about a lot in this class was the role of the creation of an evangelical Christian subculture that runs right alongside U.S. mainstream culture. Some scholars have presciently described this as an alternate universe. So there's these people over here living in their world, and there's everybody else. And then when those two worlds clash, we end up with where we are now. So contemporary evangelical Christianity has been sustained for almost 40 years primarily through culture products and communication practices, now of course including social media, but historically this would be things like television shows like VeggieTales for kids, teaching kids evangelical Christianity through animated vegetables. The Left Behind series of books and films telling us how we would how the world would end for us all. God's Not Dead, a series of films showing that the academy is evil and horrible and hates religion, which I just love because then I get to stand up in class and go, I'm talking about religion, and I'm giving space for my students to talk about religion. And of course, now we have PureFlix, which is Netflix for evangelical Christians, where you can watch only the good stuff. Yes, and the fact that you've never heard of that is precisely the point of this alternate universe, right? The fact that it's existing right alongside you and that you don't necessarily see it or hear it, and yet it's profoundly important for the people who are consuming this. Paula, did you? Oh, yeah. 88.3, and there's a version of that in pretty much every major radio area. And there's, we talked in my class about contemporary Christian music and the relationship between that and classic gospel music in terms of race. Contemporary Christian music is very white, and classic gospel music is not very white. And there's also culture products like purity rings and true love weights and teaching you how to practice abstinence and the love of God. There's Bibleopoly, where apparently if you go to jail, you end up in the abyss. Now, most of us in here look at this and laugh, and yet, again, this is a universe of symbols and meanings that have absolutely been essential for this community. A lot of the folks in this community have been homeschooled. I'm not identifying homeschool only with this community, but a lot of the folks in this community have been homeschooled, have intentionally pulled their children and their family away from what they consider to be mainstream U.S. culture. And this is the culture that they've been living for 40, 50 years. And if you don't know anything about that culture, you don't understand evangelical Christianity. It doesn't matter how well you know the Bible or how well you think you know the history of Christianity and Christian theology. So my primary person that I'm looking at in this class is a woman named Kristen Dumais, a historian who's written a very powerful book that I'll show you more about in the next slide. And Kristen Dumais is herself an evangelical Christian who grew up in Minnesota with her father working as a professor of theology at a university. And she had as her primary research question for the book that you'll see more about in just a second, why did evangelicals vote for this guy? Overwhelmingly vote for this guy, who clearly has nothing to do whatsoever with evangelicalism or Christianity as we might think of it, certainly not with the four distinctives of evangelicalism as we would approach them. So Dumais' book is Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. And there's the John Wayne reference that we'll see more about in just a second. And she made three key findings that we talked about in this course. The first is the role of cultural evangelicalism in sort of inculcating a set of values and beliefs that are running alongside mainstream U.S. culture, that are absolutely essential to this culture, and that are in many ways much more essential to evangelical Christians than the Bible. It's the belief systems that are the core of what they're all about. And if you're not familiar with those culture products and that community and the way they talk with each other, then you're not familiar with their value set. Then there's Christian nationalism, which is the belief that America is God's chosen nation and must be defended as such, right? And so this is all the arguments about, well, what is the role of religion in the public sphere, and how can we bring Christianity back into public decision making and so forth. And finally, there's what Dumais calls muscular Christianity. She argues that certain evangelicals in the 20s and 30s, especially in the U.S., were very frustrated with the fact that Christianity seemed too warm and kind and nurturing. It was wimpy. It was effeminate. It was all about caring about people. And they wanted a muscular Christianity that would go out and fight for what God wanted us to be. And they deeply bought into a complementarian theology. The complement here doesn't mean I think you've got a nice outfit on. It means that which completes. Complementarian theology is the notion that men were designed by God to do certain things, women were designed by God to do certain things, and it is unnatural and sinful to live any other way. Now, there's a lot of talk in this book about race, which unfortunately I don't have time to share with you as much today. But one of the biggest things that she draws on is that the centrality of that theology over and above any kind of concerns about, Christ or atonement or, the Ten Commandments or anything like that. The most important thing was that God made men to behave like men, women to behave like women. And this is where you get all the transphobia and the homophobia, is that's far more important to this community than many of the questions that many of us might think of as being central to Christian ideology and values. So Militant masculinity, according to DeMay, is the order of the day in this muscular Christianity. It's far more important to be a tough guy than it is to be a compassionate guy. And in fact, John Wayne is one of the rock stars of this community, despite the fact that he obviously was not an evangelical Christian, did not avow any of these beliefs, was a drinker, a smoker, divorced, all of the things that you shouldn't be to be a good Christian, quote unquote. But he was a good American, and he embodied that sort of militant masculinity that was that's so central to evangelical Christianity. Other heroes would include Mel Gibson's version of William Wallace in the movie Braveheart, right? Which again, he's not the character and the historical figure. They're not avowedly Christian. They're certainly not evangelical Christian. And their value set has nothing to do with what we think of, and most of us think of in this room, as Christianity. Teddy Roosevelt, who refashioned himself from, rich white city kid to, wild man, hunter, soldier, warrior. His refashioning of himself creates this sort of militant sense of this is what the president should be. The president should be going out shooting things. Which, of course, leads to things like Jesus Christ the superhero. And ultimately leads to this. Right? Dumay's fundamental argument is that far more important to evangelical Christians than theology or sacrifice or faith in God or heaven or hell or any of that is, do we have strong muscular leadership of the sort that apparently Christ should be, and that is distinctly and uniquely connected to U.S. culture. And for many evangelicals, that's what Trump provided. It doesn't matter that he clearly isn't any of the things that a good Christian should be in most of our eyes. All that matters is that he is a strong man, an authoritarian, masculine figure, avowing America first. So this poses several challenges to dialogue, obviously, when you want to have conversations. One of these, in a nod to Depeche Mode, is the role of your own personal Jesus. I talk about, in my prompt for this speech, I talk about radical individualism, which is where the word radical came up. Another word that's often used here is toxic individualism. I have a problem with the word toxic being overused, I think, in contemporary culture to the point where everything is toxic just because we don't like it. But radical individualism, in this case, the word radical simply means absolutely extraordinary, almost out of control, right? There's this notion that everybody has an ethical and personal obligation to do what they want to do, and that's the rule of law. That's it. Do your own. Do your own thing. Take care of yourself. Meet your own needs. Take care of your family. That's it. That's what is right. That is what is just. That is what is responsible. There is no such thing as a community from within radical individualism. You wear a mask because you want to protect yourself. Remember all those conversations we were having a year or two ago trying to explain you don't wear the mask to protect yourself, you wear the mask to protect others, and people were, well, then why do I need to protect anybody else, right? This is what I mean by radical individualism, right? I'm afraid of the, what am I trying to say? Vaccination. I'm afraid of the vaccination, so I'm not going to do this because even though it would benefit the community, I'm worried about how it will affect me. Now, by the way, those views on masking and vaccinations are your views. You can have them or not. But what I mean by referencing them is the notion that these are examples where the community is absolutely in the background. The individual is utterly in the foreground. And that is considered the ethical, responsible, natural way to behave from this perspective. You take care of yourself. Religion in this background is purely individual and subjective. You can't argue with me about religion or discuss religion with me because my understanding of God is my understanding of God, and it's right. And there's no point in having a conversation about it because I know it. It's also important to recognize one of the struggles that I had teaching this class and in other classes is I have a real struggle teaching 21st century students to think about how religion functions for a community. So we'll talk about how does this ritual function for the community. Say speaking in tongues, right? Why do people speak in tongues? Well, one of the arguments in some of the research that we've looked at is that speaking in tongues is the community talking with itself. So the community will say, you know, we have these concerns, but instead of saying them in sort of plain English, they will speak in tongues and that will get translated, and the community will sort of begin to discuss questions of, well, who are we, what should we do, how does God want us to behave, those kinds of things. So when I ask my students on tests to talk about some of the communal functions of religious ritual and speaking in tongues, what they say is, I guess people get some kick out of it, they feel that it does something for them, they feel connected with God, and I'm like, yes, and what's the communal function? They have no capacity to identify communal functions. The reason to go to church is because it makes you feel better. The reason to go to church is because it will get you to heaven. And it is you on your ride by yourself. In class, I talk about this in terms of historical yoga versus contemporary yoga. Again, I'm not dismissing yoga at all. I do yoga. I love a good downward dog. But for those of you who know, historical yoga had nothing to do with downward dog or warrior pose or any of those things. It was predominantly a meditative practice associated with the Hindu effort to become connected to everything. And to feel your connection to everything and to manifest that. Contemporary yoga is about improving your body, improving your health, improving your mind. It's all about what do I get out of this? So to quote a different 1980s song, what have you done for me lately? And so when you're having conversations about how do we as a community want to use religion, what do we want religion to be about, how do we want to use religion, what do we agree on, and so forth, this doesn't resonate with a lot of the folks that we would want to have these conversations about, because religion is something you do for yourself to save yourself with your God. One of the bodies of theology, if you can call it that we talked about in this class is prosperity theology. This is the value set that says that if you are poor, it is because you don't have enough faith in God. If you have faith in God, you will be rewarded materially. And in fact, if people are being rewarded materially, it must be because God loves them. One of the things we talked about in that class is how prosperity theology says the existing system is perfectly fine. It isn't a critique of the existing system. It doesn't use communal norms to challenge the existing system, right? Martin Luther King Jr. is using religion to say, how can we in America have these values and not live according to those values, right? Our communal values challenge the way we are, challenge the existing system. Prosperity theology and much contemporary evangelical Christianity is about the system is fine. Everything is fine just the way it is. We don't need to change a thing. You just need to pray harder. The Greek term metanoia is a word that basically means this moment of transformation. It is the moment when Saul becomes Paul on the road to Tarsus. That sense of being transformed by religion and the community being transformed and the religion sort of holding us to account and saying, you know, these are our values, so you better live them. That isn't present in a lot of these communities. And so it becomes very difficult to have conversations with folks when their position is, I'm doing this because I want to, and you can't tell me that I'm wrong. Which leads into individualism and the role of universal ethics. One of the interesting things we discovered about individualism is that individualists tend to be universal in their ethics. That is, they assume that there are a series of universal ethical codes that everybody should follow. And you might think at first that those two don't go along together, right? How can you be an individualist but everybody has the same codes? But the idea is, it's sort of like classic meritocracy in the United States. There's this notion that if the rules are the same for everyone, then those who succeed, succeed on their own merits, and those who fail, fail on their own merits. So it's about what the individual accomplishes within this framework of universal laws that we're all supposed to follow. And of course, the classic universal ethical code for most of us in this room would be the Ten Commandments. And so we have this paradox where religion is both intensely individual and subjective, and at the same time, it tells me how everyone in the world should behave. And therefore, how you should behave. Finally, there's atheological pragmatism, which is Dumay's fancy phrase for the fact that most contemporary evangelical Christians, and in fact, most of the students in my class, have no experience of theology, no knowledge of Christian history. You mention predestination or transubstantiation or child baptism or any of the conflicts that have been major flashpoints in Christian history. They're like, what? Huh? What? I don't know what that is. Atheological pragmatism is we don't care about the theology or the official values. We just want to know, what does it do? In this case, pragmatism means, does it work? What does it do for me? Right? I don't care about the theology. What does it do for me? I pray to God. I make money. Okay. That I understand. So there's a tendency, among other things, for folks from this background to view their church as the church, and simply in many cases not to be at all familiar with other religious traditions, other value sets, other practices, not only, Buddhist or Hindu or Muslim or Jewish, but other Christianities, right? I have fought a battle for the past 10 years with my students who want to say, they'll be studying other cultures in my intercultural class. And they'll say, I'm going to study this culture because it's very different from my own. This culture is predominantly Catholic, and I'm Christian. They'll say, I'll be like, excuse me, thank you very much. I'll be like, Catholicism is Christianity. Oh, no, that Catholicism is Catholicism. Catholicism is the OG Christianity. No appreciation for that. So it becomes hard to have conversations with folks because they want to see these things as intensely personal. They want to see these things as universal and at the same time applying ethics that apply to all of us. And they're only concerned with what actually happens as a result of the religion. And the religious beliefs, which, by the way, gets us back to Trump, right? All that matters is who he nominates to the Supreme Court. So, I don't want to end with that. I want to end with what helps, right? The first thing I'll ask you to remember is that categorization is the friend of algorithms and ideology. Ideology, of course, wants to separate us into communities so that we don't talk with each other, right? White Irish people in New Orleans and black people in New Orleans have more in common with each other than they had different, but they were told that they were of different races and that mattered and that they should fight over that. And who does that benefit? The existing system, the existing white folks who are oppressing both of them. The 21st century version of that, of course, is the algorithm that puts you in this community or that, and therefore you only read things from your community and that support your community's views. So I would urge you to resist tendencies to view identities categorically. For instance, none of my students in this class fit the evangelical Christian label entirely. I'll talk more about this in a second, but I was struck by, first off, how many of them were not religious in the way that most college students are not religious. They've been raised in a religious background maybe, and then they've come to college and they're trying to figure out what to do. But even those who avowed conservatism didn't fit any of the molds expressly that we talked about in the class. It's more complicated than that. One of my favorite scholars, Kenneth Burke, wrote an imaginary dialogue between Satan and God, in which we conclude this: it is Satan who is constantly looking to oversimplify symbolic action. On the other hand, the Lord is highly tolerant of ambiguity and of his symbolically motivated human creatures. One of the things that happened in this class was I taught my students things that unsettled their experience of what religion is and how it works. And suddenly they begin to see that it is more complicated than just what they have been raised to think religion is. Right? The more you know, the harder it is to be rigid or to remain in an echo chamber. Right? And there's algorithmically determined echo chambers. Finally, we need to acknowledge how faith and self are entangled. One of my best students in this class was constantly sort of trying to figure out what my position was, and at one point he just finally blurted, he said, so is this you talking or is this them talking? I didn't answer him. But it is the kind of thing where, because we identify with it so personally, it becomes very difficult to have this sort of objective conversation, right? And perhaps then where we start from is just an awareness, okay, this is personal to you, this is intimate to you. This is related to your value sets and beliefs about a variety of things that maybe don't seem to have any relationship to the official doctrine or ideology, right? Nothing in the Ten Commandments specifically says anything about gender, but I would argue absolutely that gender and gender roles are the driving factor in 21st century evangelical conservatism. Maybe we want to unsettle that, maybe we want to challenge that, but we have to recognize first and foremost that this particular sense of someone's identity is at stake with these ideas and with this conversation. And that can be hard. It can lead us to feel like we're at the end of days. But I'd like to think we're not. I wanted to tell you about a couple of my students in this class. I did have one student who was very, very conservative. Early on in one of his daily reflections that they write at the end of every class, he said, I know that conservatives will never be listened to in a college classroom. I understand that. By the end of the class, he was convinced that he had been heard, and I was very, very happy about that. He was probably the most sort of Trumpian evangelical in the class. He was Jewish. He was covered in tattoos. He had his hair dyed blonde, bright blonde, like haystack blonde. He didn't fit any of the molds, right? And I had to meet him where he was. Where are you coming at this from? I also had a student that I worked with all semester long, and I don't know how well I got through to her. But I know that she heard that I cared about her and that I wanted her to get something from the class. Her name was Lexi. She was probably the most sort of Catholic schoolgirl student in the class. She also, by the way, came to class every day on a big skateboard, long skateboard, and shorts and a belly shirt, looking far more like a skater girl than a Catholic schoolgirl. So it took me a while to realize, oh, she's the one writing these daily reflections about, everyone should be taught only the Christian faith, because if we only teach Christianity, then people won't be confused by other religions. I consistently, the very last thing I wrote to her on her final exam was, I hope that in your faith journey, you can see that faith is a very complicated thing, and that if you want to defend it, you have to understand it, and you have to recognize the diversity of values and beliefs that are out there, even within the community that you think of as your own, much less in the broader community outside of that. And although we struggle back and forth with her, me telling her write this kind of paper and her writing something else entirely because she wanted to write about how Christianity was good. And, okay, but I'm asking to analyze the speech, and you're not analyzing the speech. I think in the end she heard that I wanted her to have a conversation with me, and a conversation maybe that was a difficult one for her to have. So I want to conclude with this. Martin Buber is one of my favorite philosophers. He's intensely religious, Jewish, and a lot of what he writes is framed in religious language. And he reminds us that whenever we encounter another individual truly as a person, not as an object for us to use, we ourselves become fully human. I still believe that. It's why I go into the classroom and teach the things that I do. And I think that I did experience some of that in this class. I hope that you experienced that in the talks that you hear today and throughout the remainder of your time here with this institution. And I'm thrilled to have had a chance to share with you one last time today. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame. And we have more music.
Playing Love Will Guide Us, it's number 131 in the Grace Songbook. I believe the words will also be on the screen, so please rise in body or spirit as you are comfortable. Love will guide us, peace has guide us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has guided us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
The Spirit of God has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners, to comfort all who mourn, to give them a garland instead of ashes, and oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations, the devastations of many generations. You shall all be named ministers of our God. Isaiah chapter 61. I was reading that and I thought about the devastations in Eastern Europe at this time. Craziness going on there. And thought I'd share that with you. We get to do the rebuilding. Go have some coffee, have some conversation, have some cookie or cake. We have all those things over there. We have conversations all in here. And then you can go home. Oh, previews of coming attractions.
I just here there was not an announcement about next week's service, but we are having a pet blessing. The youth are putting that on. We have not had one in years. Yeah, I can't remember how many years. So you are welcome to bring your pet on a leash. I think there'll be stuff in the notable news. You know, I will not be bringing my cats. I might bring a picture. They don't do well outside the house. So for others of you, it'll be really a treat. I remember when Happy led that years ago with the youth, and Taylor Gibson, who will be leaving us, I think sometime in August, just really wanted to put that together. So she and Chloe and Judith are working on it. And I hope that everybody will be well and healthy next week, and we can have a really great time. So just wanted to mention that.
Right. If you bring one of those critters that likes to run around or is too enthusiastic with interacting with other critters, you might want to bring it in one of those carrying cases or whatever. And it will be fun, and it will also be a warm and lovely thing. It was last time. It really was. It was great. Say again?